Let's go. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Halftime Adjustments podcast. I am your host, Derek Benavidez, and as always, I got my best friend with me, Colton McCauley.
Heck yeah. Everybody, get you somebody who introduces you just like that.
Yeah.
I will say Guten Tag to our 5% of German listeners today. You always got to shout them out every once in a while,
yeah,
so, you know.
Yeah, this is our 25th episode. Happy 25th anniversary. We've been doing this for 25 weeks.
Anniversary.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy, huh?
25
We're going to get to a year before we know it.
I know, right? Yeah. Welcome, everybody, back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're about to head into the off season, but it's not the off season for us because we're keeping our grind on, and we're gonna be picking it up with playing some pickleball too. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, we're some pickleball boys
too.
Dude, we need to go golfing soon. That's another thing that we need to do.
I don't know if I told you this, my golf obsession lately. I've been golfing every weekend, and sometimes even during the week now. I'm playing so much.
Dude, I believe it, dude, with all the golf clubs that you got. I've seen your pictures you've been sending me.
Oh, baby. Yeah,
dude.
Let me know, man, whenever you want to go. We should go. And I told Luis the other day, I was like, yeah, we all three need to go. And he just let it die. So now I'm bringing it to you. We need to go.
Dude, I am down. You know what? I was thinking about that last weekend, actually. I was like, oh, man, we need to go play golf soon. Maybe I should hit somebody up. Like, maybe I should hit one of the boys up or something for some golf.
Hey. Yeah,
dude, I'm down. Let's do it.
I told Chris for my like the morning of my wedding, I want to wake up early with and take whoever would like to go and do like a foursome of for golf.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like the close groomsmen or something like that. The ones who golf, we all go and hit. You know, just go hit an early morning round before we all start getting ready.
Yeah. Heck yeah, dude, I'm down. That'd be fun.
Baby. It's golf season. It's coming back.
Dude,
golf and pickleball.
Golf and pickleball. No football, but golf and pickleball. I know that.
No. Yeah. Screw that football stuff.
I need to dust my golf clubs, dude. They've been in the shed for like the longest time. I haven't played in so long.
Got the cobwebs going.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll pick it up.
Your body's going to have them too.
Yeah, dude. Come on. All right. Well, let's stop talking about our personal lives, I guess. I want to briefly mention the Pro Bowl a little bit because that happened over the weekend. It was cool, right?
Was it? Was it cool? I played more exciting games of flag football than that.
Dude,
it was horrible.
Honestly, watching that, it made me want to like get into like a flag football league. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I could do that. Like that's something that probably I could do.
Right? I mean, listen, you got to be fast. It looked fun, but like, you know who I really think like this sucks for? The Pro Bowl has to suck for all of the offensive and defensive linemen and really linebackers who made it in and running backs.
Yeah.
Like this was basically like, okay, quarterback, go throw to your wide receivers and tight ends. Okay, cornerbacks and safeties, go have fun. Everybody else, F you. Like, your jobs are pretty much useless during this entire time.
Right? There was, like, no linemen at all, dude. During the games. I was like, what the heck?
Like, the running backs, like, they were just instantly, like, if you try to run, your flag's just instantly getting pulled. Like, it's just terrible.
It's just a passing game.
Format.
It was a passing game.
Yeah, it was just a big game of freaking jackpot. And then... I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was really bad. They have slowly been killing the Pro Bowl with many different format changes, and to me, this is like the nail in the coffin.
You know what? I thought it was a good idea at first. Like, I thought it was a really good idea. And then I watched the game, and then I was like, oh, okay. Well, keep in mind, I didn't actually watch it live. I watched the highlights of the game.
Good. That was the only watchable way to really do it. The game itself was so boring. The Manning brothers were great. I thought that was really cool to see them. I did like that aspect of it. Like the two coaches they brought were really fun to watch.
Yeah. I like the dodgeball game. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, Saquon got hit in the face. Did you see
Yeah,
that?
Saquon got hit. He got decked. But I guess they won the game because of that. Because you can't get hit in the head. Like there's no headshots
Yeah.
allowed.
Yeah. Uh huh.
So they won
That's
the
so
game
dumb.
because of that. Oh man, that was fun. But yeah, that happened. But the Super Bowl is coming up next week, and we briefly want to mention some of the cool little historic facts that are happening. This is pretty much the Kelsey Bowl. That's what they're calling it, at least. Travis Kelsey and his brother Jason Kelsey are going to be facing off against each other in the Super Bowl. And another interesting fact, Colton, Andy Reid, he used to be on the Eagles. Remember that? So this is the first time a coach is ever going against his former team in the Super Bowl. And so that's another interesting tidbit as well, which is pretty cool. So there's some historic stuff that's going on in this year's Super Bowl, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's fun. That's always fun to see things like that happen. And they all the players who have made it this year, like they so deserve it. And I think it's so cool that the Kelsey brothers. I don't know if you follow their podcast. Or do you follow that at all?
I've seen a couple of clips. Yeah.
Yeah, so like that is, I think it's called New Heights is what their podcast is called, and they've been talking about like their mom and how like she actually has a jersey that's like half a Chiefs jersey and half an Eagles jersey, and she packed them both like cookies before the game and to take on this trip, and she put like a little handwritten note for both of them, and they brought her onto the podcast today actually, and talked about like we're each on a cliff. You have to save one of us. Who are you saving, Mom? Like you need to pick. It's time to pick a favorite. And so if there was ever two people who deserved it, I'd say it's these guys. They're phenomenal for the league. They have great personalities, and they've just been studs and cornerstones, both Hall of Famers. It's just so cool to see.
Yeah, and both their respective positions too. It's cool to see, especially. And could you imagine being their mom too, dude? Like just like knowing that, like regardless, like she already won because one of her kids is going to win the Super Bowl, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
it's enough to have. Imagine this, like the percentages of those parents, like it's enough to have one of your children go to the NFL, right?
Right.
And then to have two children go to the NFL. And then to have two children produce Super Bowl careers. And then have two of them actually play in a Super Bowl and then produce Hall of Fame careers. Like they're in like the smallest percentage of people in the world who have like done that. It's incredible to see. I think them and the Watt family are like the two that have pulled this off. It's crazy to see.
Yeah, that's so cool, dude.
Yeah, it truly is.
And they're playing each other. That's just another crazy historic thing, too. It's wild.
Yeah, so cool.
Oh, man. Well, let's get into some news. First things first, they've confirmed that Brock Purdy needs Tommy John surgery, and he's going to be out for a year. So it looks like it's going to be nothing but Trey Lance this year, or this upcoming year, I should say. So they're probably they're more than likely going to go with Trey Lance. That's kind of what I'm thinking because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo's coming back to the 49ers, honestly.
No, I think all the rumors are that he's probably going to take an exit this year. Either I don't know if he's a free agent or if he has to work something through the team, but I can't imagine he chooses to stay, and I can't imagine the team would want him to stay. Like they spent all that capital on this quarterback, go see what he can do, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's going to be interesting who's going to be the backup, though, because I don't think Brock Purdy's going to play at all. I mean, if anything, he'll probably play towards the end of the year. But more than likely, he's not going to play this year, or this upcoming year, I should say. So that'd be interesting to see who they get as a backup.
I'm really interested in this. I want to go. I'm going to do some research for next week's episode. Like the history of Tommy John surgery is extremely prevalent in baseball.
Right.
It's something that you see very often, and it's because of like the rotation of the ball. You're doing too much damage to your elbow, but you don't see it in football very often. But that's the same sort of issue that Josh Allen was having too. So like, what are these modern day quarterbacks doing with their ball rotation that's causing their elbows to have more strain than previous quarterbacks, like previous generations?
Right.
So I'm super curious to know the like science behind that and why we're starting to see this a little more often than we've ever seen in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the whole situation is and why that this sort of situation is occurring. But yeah, we'll keep you updated on that sort of thing. Unfortunately, like the way I look at it now, like if Trey Lance dominates this upcoming year, which I think he will, like I think he'll be good this year. I don't think Brock Purdy's gonna like. I don't know if he'll play at the caliber that he was playing this year, and like in his career, honestly. I just don't see it.
I mean, he's Mr. Irrelevant. You have literally like two opposite sides of the spectrum. One was the 1.3 pick, and one was like the last pick in the draft. So, like, I think if Lance comes back, you have to do everything you can to let him succeed. Like, that was your guy, right? So, like,
Right.
I don't know. For them to give up on him that fast would just seem criminal to say, like, hey, even if you are playing good, we're going back to Brock Purdy. Like, I just don't know that you can do that. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the Lance show this year. And normally with at least like pitchers, when you're coming back from Tommy John surgery, it takes time to get your velocity back up and to get that pitch arsenal back the way it should be through all that rehab. So, like, even when you're coming back from Tommy John's, like it's similar to an ACL tear where like you're not the same even when you come back. So I don't know how it affects NFL quarterbacks. I don't know. Again, not a whole lot of data on this. So is his throw power and his deep ball accuracy, are those things going to be affected by this? So, what does a recovery time look like compared to a Tommy John baseball surgery and recovery and velocity and all of those things? They matter. So, yeah, super intrigued by this. Trey Lance is the guy, though. I think this is the way it should be going down, and I'm excited as a Trey Lance owner in Dynasty. I'm glad that he's finally getting a shake and can hopefully make something of it next year.
Yeah, well, it's just something to see. I think it's Trey Lance's turn, regardless. But yeah, we'll just see how it goes.
Heck yeah.
Moving on, I want to briefly discuss. They announced that Sean Payton is actually going to be the coach of the Denver Broncos, and it was interesting because he also said that. So Russell Wilson has a quarterback, like his own personal training coach.
Yeah.
And it was funny because Sean Payton was like, "No, I don't want that. I don't want him in here." And so now Russell Wilson is without his personal training coach. So I don't know. I don't know if maybe Sean Payton is going to be like being the man of that sort of thing. But I don't know if it's going to affect Russell Wilson in any way, in a negative way. But it's something to keep in mind whenever you're drafting next year, if you were anticipating drafting Russell Wilson. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. All right, next bit of news. We want to briefly mention this Joe Mixon aggravated assault. He was convicted, and like they had a search warrant like out for him, but I think they ultimately dismissed it. But I don't know, Colton, let me ask you, does this like concern you like at all for dynasty purposes? Because this could be like an Alvin Kamara situation where they like dismiss it and then bring it back like the next year, kind of like how Alvin Kamara is going to be this year. Does this concern you for dynasty at all?
A little bit, not as much, because I think the major like key difference here is that with the Joe Mixon thing, charges have been dropped. With Kamara, the charges are going through. So I do think the commissioner has shown, regardless of what happens legally, we've seen it with Deshaun Watson, we've seen it with Ezekiel Elliott, we've seen it with Kamara. A suspension will like most likely come, even if it like legally doesn't matter if he's found guilty or not. You're probably seeing a suspension still. So I don't know, maybe 2 games or something like that. But where I actually see more concern is from the Bengals side of, like, he already had a contract that was somewhat cuttable. Will this prompt them to go ahead and exercise that cut option?
Right.
Because they're spending like $11 million a year on him. And I think if they took the cap hit this year, it's like $2 million if they decide to cut him. So, like, Samaje Perine showed to do very good last year. He's 27. There's some great running backs in this year's draft that should be at the bottom of the first round, sort of top of the second round, in Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson potentially. So, like, do they decide to say, like, all right, man, you had your shot? Because this, I don't know if you remember this. This is his second strike. He had a domestic violence case coming out of college in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So he has a history of this now. Like, this is a consistent issue that's popping up. So that's something you got to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm concerned about it a little bit for Dynasty's sake because because of what exactly you just said. The Bengals might just be like, screw it, we're not going to take this anymore, and then move on from him. So that concerns me a little bit for Dynasty's sake. So I don't know. I would just monitor what the Bengals organization does going forward with Joe Mixon, because that's the only concern that I have for this sort of thing that's going on.
Yeah, the next few months will be telling. If they draft sort of one of those top end running backs with the first or second round, I'd be concerned that he's a cut candidate. Mm-hmm.
All right, next bit of news. There's rumors going out there that the Arizona Cardinals are having trouble finding a head coach because nobody really wants to step in and coach Kyler Murray. Nobody wants to be handcuffed with this guy for the next, what, is it 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, 4 years.
I mean, I understand, but I mean, like, honestly, like, Kyler Murray's a good player. I don't know if maybe it's just because of how stubborn he is with the coaching staff and what they saw whenever he was playing and arguing with Cliff Kingsbury. So I don't know what's going on, really, Colton. What do you think?
I think this whole thing of, like, so it's very prominent in basketball for the star players to have decision making with the head coaching opportunity. Right. And this has only become like something recent in football where they're like, okay, quarterback, let's make you happy. Like, no, there are 54 men on this roster. There are, 22 starters on the field. You are not, you may be the most important player, but you are not the only guy on this field. Whereas basketball, there's 5. And someone like Luka Doncic is the end-all, be-all. Like, of course that guy gets the decision. LeBron James, those guys. But, like, you're one of 22, man. So I think that all this, like, oh, we're going to let Kyler Murray make the decisions around here. Of course that's a turnoff for the coaches. Like, who's going to want to step into that situation? And, like, I think all that tells a coach is, like, if it comes down to it, you're not staying. It's pretty clear they got rid of Kingsbury and kept Kyler Murray and then said, oh, Golden Boy, please choose our next head coach. Well, if they don't jive after 2 years, they're just going to cut the head coach again.
Right.
Like, no one's going to go into that situation knowing that he's untouchable. And, you know, I'd stay away from there too. So they've built this, like, wall around Kyler Murray as a you know, superstar athlete and paid him all this money, and I don't know that he's that attractive of a piece these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens in the offseason because honestly, this will be the longest that any team, if they get to February 11th, this will be the longest any team has been without a head coach. So we'll see. I didn't know that. We'll see if they find somebody by then. But yeah, I mean that's kind of why Sean Payton like kind of avoided the Cardinals. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. We'll see about this. All right. Well, next bit of news, and last but not least, there's word that Derek Carr is visiting with the Saints, and this will be pretty cool. Ooh. Honestly, I think this would be a great landing spot for Derek Carr. I mean, dude, like if you saw him at the Pro Bowl, he was putting it on, dude. He was putting it all on the line. Like he was trying to show out for all the teams out there that he still had it. So if Derek Carr goes to the Saints, I think he's got really good weapons out there with Chris Olave. If Michael Thomas can ever get back to where he was, maybe even him. But dude, like they have all the pieces. They just don't have a true quarterback out there. And I think Derek Carr would do well over there, honestly. So, I mean, I don't think he's going to be like an all-time great over there. Like it's not going to be like a ultimate change, but he might have some value over there with the Saints. I think it's a good landing spot. And land on the opposite side, if Aaron Rodgers goes to the Raiders, that'd be dominant. That'd be a dominant landing spot for the Raiders, I think.
Truly,
To have him go back with Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the Saints aspect is going to be really interesting. What I'm curious to know is what is the compensation going to be? The Raiders have made it very, very public that they don't really want him back. But with the Saints so desperate to clearly get a quarterback, would they be willing to pay the first-round pick that they just got for Sean Payton? Or do you try to use that as draft capital to go up and get a young quarterback, like one of the studs? So, like, are you willing to pay a second-rounder, or will you pay that first-round pick? Will the Raiders hold him ransom for a first-round pick? You know, like, all of these things are going to be questions that I'm super interested to know, like the value of Derek Carr to other teams and what the Raiders are going to hold out for. Yeah. So, if that doesn't line up, the Raiders are stuck with him, and they've already publicly aired they don't want him around. So, like, it's just tiptoeing act of trying to maximize your value, but understanding that, like, you want him gone because you want to have people like Aaron Rodgers, an opportunity for him to land. Right. But I don't know if you heard, the Raiders also said that they have come, like, a high-ranking individual who stayed anonymous has come out and said that they were banking on Tom Brady to be a free agent.
Right.
So, like, how much does that alter their plans, knowing that Tom Brady's now gone and the market has dried up a little bit for quarterbacks? Like, you're like, oh no, did we show our hand a little too soon here? We may need to fall back on Derek Carr, but he's already announcing to the world, like, can't wait to see who my next team is. Right. So, like, yeah, I don't know. Going to be super, super interesting to see how this one plays out overall over the next probably, I'd say, month or so leading up to the draft.
Yeah. I know the Saints will be a good landing spot for Derek Carr, but it'd be interesting to see if the Packers and the Raiders just do like a straight-up trade for quarterbacks. I mean, that'd be kind of interesting to see. I don't know if that'll necessarily happen. But it'd be interesting to see if anybody includes like rounds or anything like that, because this will be kind of like identical to what the Rams did with the Lions with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, and it worked for 1 year whenever Matthew Stafford came into the Rams, but I don't know if it will necessarily work this year, or if they ended up doing that. But honestly, I think that the Lions got a better quarterback now and for a longer term, because Jared Goff is a lot younger than Matthew Stafford. So it'd be interesting to see what shakes out for this situation. But yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces that are going to happen this offseason with people moving around and with just all these people that are wanting out of their organizations. So it'd be interesting to see how that all shakes out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's so many dynamics to this. So, and still teams that need quarterbacks. So I don't know. I think the Saints are probably a big buyer, and but you're right. Like Aaron Rodgers, I kind of forgot he's still under contract. Like he doesn't get to just decide.
Yeah,
and he's 38. He may just decide he wants to retire and take a different route. So no telling with these guys, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was the last bit of news that we had. And so now I want to get into a little bit of the past, and I want to look at what our predictions were for quarterbacks at the start of the year. And we were way off. I know we were way off. Like everybody was probably way off. But it's interesting because we have I have three people on my list that actually made it into the top 5, and you have 2 people, Colton, that actually made it to the top 5. And so it's kind of interesting to see where quarterbacks can be drafted at to have high draft value. But But I want to go ahead and start with our first one. Both of us unanimously had Josh Allen as our number one quarterback. And, I mean, honestly, it was a solid pick. He actually finished at number 2. The person that took the number 1 spot was Patrick Mahomes. And so, I mean, that's like he's in the Super Bowl right now. So, I mean, that's understandable. But Josh Allen, Colton, what do you think his value will be next year? And where do you think he will be drafted at?
So I still think he's going to be really high. I think he'll probably be one of the first 3 quarterbacks taken off the board. I actually think there's a lot, like, I think this is probably the last year that I'm on the Josh Allen train. And then I think going into 2024, I think I'm going to hop off. I think that this is another, I know we discussed the Bengals dynasty and how it could be coming to a close. I think we're seeing the same thing with the Josh Allen and Bills dynasty. So I think he puts a lot of tread on his body, and he probably still has a few more great years left. But I don't know, man. It's almost just like a gut feeling that I think we're going to start seeing him go downhill a little bit here after, like, not this year, but the year after that. I think we're going to start seeing some of those flaws highlighted. But I do think where he goes again this year is around where he went last year, which is one of the top quarterbacks off the board, probably in the low second to very high third round.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree to a point. I think he'll still have more value long term. I think he'll be good for another 3, maybe 4 years. I think you gotta kind of remember, like, how long, like, somebody like Aaron Rodgers was good for. Like, he was the number 1 quarterback for, like, maybe 5 years in a row. So, I mean, like, if you think about it like that, then it's kind of like, oh, yeah, he'll be probably good for another 5 to 6 years. That's kind of what I'm thinking about it like. And the same thing, like, on the flip side, the guy that was actually number 1 was Patrick Mahomes. And the same thing with him, really. Like, he's already been good for 3 years, I think. It's been like, this is like his 3rd, maybe 4th year that he's been, like, really good. For sure. And so he's always been, like, one of the highest guys that's been drafted. And so that's kind of what I think about these quarterbacks going forward. I don't know if necessarily Josh Allen's window is closing for maybe his Super Bowl contention, maybe. But I think he'll still have a lot of fantasy value going forward within the next 5 years, half decade. So
I want to expand on that because here's why I think he differs. He plays such a physical style of football. I equate you sort of brought up Aaron Rodgers as a comp, and I think you're going to see Patrick Mahomes have a very similar career to Aaron Rodgers as far as longevity goes. So Mahomes, I think for sure, has at least another 10 years of dominance, to be quite honest with you. Like, I don't know that guy is going to fall off. He seems to, because he's such a good pocket passer, and Josh Allen is too, but Josh Allen has, like, his big thing was those intangibles, his massive arm, his ability to run, the fact that he's 6'5". All of that reminds me of Cam Newton, and he put his body on the line a lot. And the only thing I'm saying is that, like, Josh Allen, we have seen him dominate. He's been the best quarterback in football, or one of the best, for the past 3 seasons, right? Yeah. So, like, you said the window of complete dominance was around 5 years for the top-end guys. So we probably have a year or 2 more of complete dominance by him. But where sort of he could fall off earlier than the rest is how much more he's putting his body on the line, like Cam Newton was. And if you remember, Cam Newton was out of the league basically by 31. He's been out of the league for a few years now, and he probably hasn't been fantasy relevant since like 2016 or 17. So that's kind of where I equate him. Like when he doesn't have the ability to run the ball as effectively as he did in those glory days. And we saw the elbow injury this year, and we may start see some thigh contusions or something like that, where it's like, okay, they're starting to pop up. those rolled ankles. Like, I'm just worried about that with people who take so many hits. And I love Josh Allen. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I just worry about his longevity with how his play style is. Reminds me a lot of Cam Newton and how much wear he puts on his body.
Yeah, I see your point. I think that eventually, I think Josh Allen has the skills as a good passer. Like, he has the passing abilities of somebody like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, which is great to see in a quarterback. So I think that he'll more than likely rely on those things later down the line in his career. I think he'll, like, right now his play style is very aggressive and he runs the ball like crazy and he's like all over the field. But I think he'll eventually dial it back a little bit and then start to produce like with keeping himself in the pocket. So
just keep in mind, when he was a pocket guy this year, a straight pocket passer, he tied the NFL for most interceptions this year with 17.
I mean, it's something that he's gonna probably have to learn, I think, like, and get more accustomed to. But I don't see that it being impossible. That's somebody like Cam Newton couldn't. But I think it's possible for Josh Allen. That's the thing. So
okay, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. He definitely has a skill set to pull it off. I just that'll be an interesting one to see as he starts to have to change that play style.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to number 2. We unanimously had Justin Herbert at number 2, and he finished at number 11. The guy that actually finished at number 2 was Josh Allen. What happened to Justin Herbert this year, Colton? He just like completely fell off the cliff. Honestly, I cannot believe that we put Justin Herbert at 2 over Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I mean, he had just lost Tyreek Hill. I understand why at the time we were thinking it, but man, looking back, what a mistake, because I don't know what happened to Herbert, man. I think he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL from a talent standpoint, and he lost his receivers a lot this year. They need to get him some healthy receivers who can be there for him year-round. That's the only thing I can think of off like the immediate top of my head. Like, I don't know. What do you think happened to him, man? Like, do you think it was a coaching scheme? Was it, does he get too scared in the pocket? I mean, what do you think is going wrong with that situation there?
It's interesting because I want to say immediately that it was maybe because he didn't have a healthy team. Like, and he didn't have his receivers or anything like that. And I want to bring that up because there's also another bit of news that we didn't mention, but I don't know if you heard, but the Chargers are looking to shop around for Keenan Allen. So they're looking to move Keenan Allen this upcoming offseason. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but it would be interesting to see if Justin Herbert loses Keenan, if they bring in another wide receiver in the draft, or if they try to trade for one or something like that. But it'd be interesting to see how Justin Herbert reacts to that. Because he didn't have Keenan for the full season, and he didn't have Mike Williams for the full season. But whenever he did have everybody, towards the end of the season, he didn't do much. Like, he really didn't produce that much, and he had like super bust games for you, like in your final fantasy seasons, or in your fantasy playoffs. And so like that's something to keep in mind when looking at him long term. I mean, they just fired their offensive coordinator. Maybe that'll spark some light into what Justin Herbert's future looks like. But whenever we were coming into this draft, it's funny because we just thought he was going to be a superstar this year. We thought he was going to be the Josh Allen of this year. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just it's funny. Like, honestly, it's just hilarious because Austin Eckler finished as the number 1 running back. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see how it shakes down, because it's also going to depend on what happens in the offseason too, like what happens with his weapons. So the draft is going to depend on something crazy. I mean, if there's any more crazy trades, that's going to depend on what his value, where his value is. But we were just so high on him. So that's weird.
I mean, he's still only 24. You know, maybe this new offensive coordinator can come in, and he's done. Kellen Moore has done phenomenal things with Dak Prescott, and I think that Herbert is like 10 times better than Dak Prescott from a raw ability standpoint. So I think that we're going to see, like, I'm back on the train. We'll see how it goes, but the hype is there for me again. I think you're right. We'll have to see if they can go out and get like one of those top end wide receivers in this year's draft for him, what Keenan Allen does. But man, he's just one of those guys that, like, he seems to be in the perfect position to succeed, and it was a huge letdown. So I think he falls a little bit in next year's rankings to start off the year, but again, still, like, his upside is too high to let him fall too much, you know?
Yeah, I get that. And I think his biggest chance of upside is having Kellen Moore being the offensive coordinator, because he did great things with Dak, and Dak's not that great. So, yeah, I agree with you on that.
He's not to that level. He's not to that level.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to number 3. We unanimously put Patrick Mahomes at number 3. He obviously finished as the number 1 quarterback, and the true number 3 quarterback was Jalen Hurts. We didn't even have him inside the top 5. This one shocked pretty much everybody. I think you kind of alluded to the fact that he was going to be great this year, Colton. Before the offseason, but you didn't really commit to it. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be great, dude. He's going to be great for the future, I think, too. It'd be interesting for how long he's going to be great for, because he's, again, one of those other running mobile quarterbacks. So it'd be interesting to see how long his body can kind of take on that sort of challenge. But, yeah, he's great, dude. I mean, honestly, like, I think Alabama should have kept him, and then Tua should have went somewhere else. So.
Truly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's looked really, really good. They've apparently said that they're committing to him fully at this point. Yeah. So now, man, I just don't know. The team scares the hell out of me.
They're just so well-rounded. They have so many weapons on that team.
Yeah. Who do you think's the biggest threat on that roster?
Besides Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
Offensively, it's tough. Because if I say A.J. Brown, then Devontae Smith is on the other side of that coin. Dude, Devontae Smith can be a wide receiver 1 by himself somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. That guy, that's what they're probably going to end up doing, is trading him away for like a future first.
Right. So, I mean, like, dude, they freaking robbed the Giants in that draft, dude. They freaking got
that was
such a good deal there. Dude.
Yeah. Man, see, I have to think that it's A.J. Brown, but like, what's so scary about that team is they have another high first round pick at 10 overall, and then they have their own first round pick, which is going to be 31 or 32. So they have like so many people they can build around for this roster and for this team to keep it going to be great. And like, say what you will about the quarterback, they're putting him in a position to where he can't really fail. So, you're right. He has the pedigree for national titles. He isn't necessarily known to be a really heavy passer. He uses his legs a lot. I'd say he uses them like Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson style. So to see how long he can do it, I think he probably has a few years of greatness in them. And then he comes back down to earth. But he's going to secure the bag in the meantime. That's the big news there.
Yeah, especially if he wins the Super Bowl this year, this would be freaking insane, honestly.
Truly, I would hate it.
Yeah, no, me too. I would as well. But yeah, dude, I mean, like, to your point that they do have a high first round, it would just piss me off, dude. It would piss me off so much if they just went out and got Bijan to just add to their roster. Like, I've been thinking about it ever since you said it in that podcast that we talked about the draft. Dude, it would just grind my gears so much if they just boosted their offense even more, because their offense is already high powered and their defense is great too. So I mean, like it's hard to see where they would need help. Like even if they, like yeah, it's like the cherry on top type thing. Like they really don't need much at this point. So yeah, they're going to be good for a while, I think. So
I've heard where they could be going is cornerback, because their cornerbacks they currently have are really good, but they're starting to get old. Mm-hmm. So like the smartest thing they could do would be to say like, okay, if there's a top end quarterback left, we trade down and we let somebody else pay us a first rounder again, and we move down a few picks, get a future first rounder, just like we did the previous year. And with the Saints, and we do this again. Right. But if there is like the top cornerback available, like the best thing they could do would be to draft another corner, and just keep the gravy train rolling here. I hope they spend it on Bijan Robinson, because that just means it's a depreciating asset. Like they don't last nearly as long as other people do. So I would say like, by all means, do it. If they're smart, they're taking like an interior defensive lineman, or they're taking like a top-end cornerback, one of the best safeties off the board. Maybe one of the best. If they wanted to keep that offensive line going, you have Kelsey, who's old. Lane Johnson is old. So could you go replace one of those guard or center positions and start lining up the next generation of your offensive line greatness to tag on with Mailata? So, like, there's a lot they could do that's a lot smarter than a running back. So I hope they're greedy and take the running back.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So this dynasty ends a little sooner.
Right. Yeah. All right, well, let's move on from Jalen Hurts. So this is where we differ a little bit, Colton. And you had at 4, you had Kyler Murray, who finished at the 18 spot. And I had Joe Burrow, which did finish at the number 4 spot. So, I think Joe Burrow, dude, he's in line to be, I think, a really great player for a really long time, because he's a pocket passer. He tries not to get hurt. He's already gotten hurt. But I think he's one of those players that we're probably going to be talking about for a while.
Yeah, for sure. You hit this on the head, man. Congrats to you for having a lot of faith. With how many sacks he took the previous year in his injury history, like that steered me away. But yeah, you hit this one as spot on as it could be. So I agree with you. He looks to be phenomenal. I'm tied to Jamar Chase in just about every league, and I love Joe Burrow because of it. So, man, I couldn't agree more on this one. The Murray news, I would be super intrigued to see where he finished if he didn't get injured. Right. I still think it wouldn't have been in the top 5, probably somewhere in the top 10 though, not 18. That skewed his numbers a little bit, but still a big miss. I don't think anybody's going to have Murray in their top like 8 next year. I don't see how you can. Like I think he's going to fall in a lot of people's rankings. Well,
he's going to be injured too for the first part of next season. Because he's coming off of an ACL. That's probably another reason why they're having a tough time with the coaching decision over there, because you're tied to Kyler Murray and you're kind of already starting the season with a backup quarterback. So it's already a bad situation in general. But yeah, I mean, like, dude, Kyler Murray had all the weapons. Like actually I should say he didn't have all the weapons to start for the majority of the year. He lost DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks, and then once he got DeAndre Hopkins back, he lost Marquise Hollywood Brown, and then he lost Zach Ertz as well. So I mean, it's just one of those things where, dang, he just lost a lot of his weapons, and so like, what does this tell me for next season? I don't think he's too fantasy relevant. I'd be surprised if anybody even drafted him next year, because he's probably going to miss a good amount of time to start off the season. And if they're looking to shop DeAndre Hopkins around, they're probably on a rebuilding phase. So it's going to be kind of hard for Kyler Murray the next few years. I think it's going to be hard for him to kind of have all the pieces that he needs in order to succeed. But yeah, for Joe Burrow, dude, I think he's going to be locked in for a while. I think he's going to be a Bengal for a good amount of time for the future seasons to come. I think he'll have Jamar Chase for a long time as well. So I think he'll be one of those guys that, like he'll have the weapons always for a good amount of time. And then like the Bengals, they have a good strategic board that they can bring in, and like if they lose T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd this offseason, regardless, they're going to have Jamar Chase. And then they'll probably bring in a couple of receivers, like maybe some rookies or something like that, in order to balance out that those wideouts over there in Cincinnati. So, I mean, the Joe Mixon news is questionable, but I mean, shoot, they can, like you said earlier, they can go out and get a running back if they wanted to, just because they have the ability to do that. So. The one thing that does concern me about that team, though, is the offensive line, because they haven't been good for the last 2 years. So, they do have to get better at their offensive line scheme. So, I mean, if they're going to do that in the draft, if they're going to do that by trading away somebody and getting somebody, I mean, I don't know. That's something that I guess we have to see, and something that has to shake out. So it'd be interesting to see what he can do in the upcoming years.
Yeah, I think he's to me, he's like firmly planted in as the third best quarterback now. I think he is like locked in here. So I would say it's Mahomes, Allen, and then Burrow at number 3. Yeah. He's now that number 3 guy for me. So You're right. The offensive line is a bit scary. I think if they were smart, in my opinion, like I understand you want as many people as you can get from a weapon standpoint, wide receivers. But if they're smart, like I would be shopping T. Higgins for like an elite offensive lineman if you can. Somebody who is needing help out there, and maybe shopping it with a pick for somebody like an absolute like. Someone who's going to be a rock star for a long time. Someone like Quentin Nelson, who just signed a 4-year contract. He is young still. Quentin Nelson is like in his young 20s.
Yeah.
He is the best left guard in football, and he's going to be that way for a long time.
Right.
And so then you now have a pillar, and it's not like an old pillar. You have like the next Zach Martin. Right. For the next 6 to 7 years of Joe Burrow's life, you have that guy. And you can build around that, and he can hopefully influence the offensive line decisions a little bit, get some right guys in place. Like that, if I'm them, that's my probably first move, is saying like, all right, here we go. Let's trade one of these. We have a surplus in one department, and we clearly need help in another. So let's take that in a second-round pick, take a star wide receiver, second-round pick, and go trade it for someone like a Quentin Nelson, if at all possible. That is, I think, the only way that you get out of this hole a little bit, and then jumpstart with some good draft picks. So, but I mean, I think you're spot on. This guy's going to be around for a very long time, going to have a great career, and Jamar Chase is going to be his guy. So they'll just be rock stars for years to come, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's move on to our 5th and final player. And we were way off on this one. Nobody was everybody was way off on this one. Nobody thought that this guy would have ever made it. But we picked, Colton, you picked Lamar Jackson at number 5, and he finished at the number 14 spot. And I picked Kyler Murray here, which finished at the 18th spot. We kind of talked about him already. But the guy that actually finished number 5 was Geno Smith. Geno Smith, the undrafted all-star. Nobody picked him. Nobody thought he was going to do good. Geno freaking Smith had all the weapons. He had DK for the whole season. He had Tyler Lockett for the most of the season. He took the team to the playoffs. What do you make of this guy going forward, Colton? Because he's one of these guys that they're probably going to commit with in Seattle. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting because Pete Carroll, he pretty much made Russell Wilson, right? So is this going to be like a Russell Wilson type player going forward?
I struggle with this one. If I'm the Seattle Seahawks, I'm taking a quarterback this year. I think that Geno Smith. I think he's 32. So like, as we've seen with quarterbacks, although everybody says, like, I know Russell Wilson came out and said it, and Aaron Rodgers came out and said it, that like, oh, I'm going to play till I'm 40. I'm spending $1 million a year on my body. Like, I can do this. Well, Russell Wilson's 34, and he played like hot garbage this year. And then we just saw Aaron Rodgers. He's 38, and he's probably one of the best quarterbacks we've seen of our generation. And he is starting to be like, I might need to retire. So all I'm saying is, like, it seems, I mean, we've seen Matt Ryan. What's he, like, 34, 35 now? So, like, I would say if you're Geno Smith, he has not been able to put it together for most of his career. This could be that you caught lightning in a bottle, and you don't know if you're going to be able to do that again. You have a very, very high draft pick given by the Denver Broncos, to where I think they're like drafting 5th overall this year. That puts you in the conversation to go get an elite quarterback. You're getting Stroud. You're getting Levi. You're getting one of the top-end quarterback prospects. I think there's probably not a better chance for you, like, to do that than now. Like, I don't know that the Denver Broncos are going to do that again and be terrible. You're not banking on yourself being terrible. So, like, why play with something, even if the guy you get sits for a season and Geno Smith has another year of greatness, and it is the fact that, you know, okay, well, hey, he did it again. Well, don't pay him. Let him go, or try to find a way to trade him and rock with your rookie at that point. It just seems like if you're doing good housekeeping, that to me is the best move they can make right now. They could probably use some offensive line pieces. They could probably use some defensive line pieces. I get it. I understand it's not the sexiest move, and it's not the best for team building. But to me, it's the best housekeeping move for that organization, is to go draft the next face of this franchise for many years to come. So I have them as like a sleeper to take a quarterback that not a lot of people have their eye on.
Yeah. That's interesting, Colton. I mean, honestly, you're making a lot of good points, but I could not disagree with you more, because I feel like Geno Smith is one of those guys that they discovered, and because they discovered him, it's gonna be like kind of like the Cowboys. How the Cowboys kind of like they're really happy with their in-house guys, and they only want to sign their in-house guys. I think they're gonna commit to Geno Smith for at least for the next few years. Yeah, they might not be in this position again where they can go get a quarterback like really high. But I think for them to get a quarterback really high, I think they're going to have to trade up, because they are at the, what is it, number 5 spot. I just see I see those quarterbacks, those top quarterbacks going earlier than that, and I see them having to bolster something else and having to scramble for something else. So I think that because of that, they're going to commit with Geno Smith regardless of where they fall within the draft. But yeah, dude, I honestly think that because they did find lightning in a bottle there, I think they're going to probably commit to that and just kind of say, hey, if Russell Wilson can do it till he was 35 and Geno Smith is 32, I think we can probably keep him for another 3 years and just ride it out. Maybe if he starts to suck like within the next 2 years or within the next year and a half, then we can go out and start scrambling for a quarterback, trading up or whatever, or even trading away for a quarterback. So yeah, I think that's just one of those situations where they kind of see where they kind of are in love with what they're doing now. And so they don't want to move away from it so necessarily, because they have Tyler Lockett and they have DK Metcalf on lock. They just signed Kenneth Walker, so they have a pretty well-rounded offense already. And so like if they move on from Geno Smith and get like one of those top guys, yeah, it might be better for their offense, but it's going to shy away from what they actually need, which is like a more solid defense, which is what they're probably going to draft for. So that's just kind of what I'm looking at and how I'm seeing it. But yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, Geno Smith he's one of those guys that he was so he was like this year's Mr. Irrelevant kind of, where nobody really had faith in him at all, and like he was like undrafted. I picked him up. I mean, he kind of took me to the playoffs, which was great. But I mean, yeah, it was great to have him on my team. But I don't know, what do you think he's going to fall next year, Colt?
I personally think he falls like way outside of the top 10 guys. I think like he's not a sexy name by any means. And again, he's like 32, bro. Going into next year, he's going to be 33. He turns 33 in October. Like, again, Russell Wilson's 34, and we watched him fall off a cliff on year 34. Tyler Lockett is 30. We start to see wide receivers fall off at around 30, 31. Like, they have a lot of rebuilding to do. So I get that you're saying, like, what you were saying, that at 5, they may be a little too low to grab a guy. You're right, they may be. But Chicago is not taking a quarterback. Houston is. So you can take Bryce Young off the board, right? So then you have number 3, Arizona. They're not taking a quarterback. They have their guy. Number 4, Indianapolis Colts. They're probably taking a quarterback. Number 5, the Seahawks. They should take a quarterback. That takes the top 3 quarterbacks off the board, and I say there's probably about 5 elite quarterbacks, and I think they would be really smart to take the quarterback. I believe he's out of Florida, Anthony Richardson. Dude, I love Anthony Richardson. I think out of this quarterback class, Anthony Richardson's going to end up being the best one, and whoever gets him is going to have a field day. But he's being projected as like the 5th quarterback taken. So all I'm saying is, like, they may not get Bryce Young, they may not get C.J. Stroud, but Anthony Richardson is still there. Will Levi, I believe is his name, is out of Kentucky. He's still there. So, like, they could still grab a quarterback. It may not be the top prospect, but it's going to be one of the top guys, and they could do that if they want to. Now, defensive players that could be selected off the board, Chicago could go defensive help. If they don't trade out of that position, they're probably taking the top defensive tackle or the top defensive end. Then you have Arizona is from every mock draft doing the exact same thing. Whatever is not taken, there's Will Anderson and there's Jalen. I forget his last name. He's out of Georgia, but he's like the top defensive line prospect. We'll have this more these conversations a little deeper as it gets closer to the actual draft. But all I'm saying is, like, those top defensive guys will be flying off the board. Yeah. So it's actually just as likely that they look at that situation and go, okay, we lost our top 3 defensive prospects, but one of the top-end quarterbacks fell to us. So I can kind of see it going either direction. Or if they both trade out, let's say Arizona and Chicago decide to trade out of that and they make room for, I don't know, Carolina, Atlanta, Las Vegas, one of those teams to step up and take a quarterback, well then, yeah, maybe they go top defensive prospect on the board. So they're in a good spot at 5 to see where the board falls to them. They could get an Anthony Richardson. They could get a C.J. Stroud if the board falls correctly. Or they could get a Will Anderson and have one of the best defensive edge prospects we've seen in a very long time. So if I'm that team, I'm not going the defensive edge route or defensive lineman, but I wouldn't fault them for doing it because it does make sense to kind of go that direction. But let it be known, we're going to know because Geno Smith, he is technically a free agent. His contract expired this past year. I didn't realize that. So he's an unrestricted free agent this year. If they don't re-sign him, it's going to be very obvious that they're going the quarterback route, which they may want to do because it's proven all the people who are having success are the ones who are having success in their rookie deals. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Pay Geno Smith above the average market for the next, 4 or 5 year contract until he's 36, 37 years old? That doesn't seem like the right move. So getting a rookie, to me, makes even more sense than doing something like that. But he had a great season. I think he can follow it up. I wouldn't hate them for re-signing him. It's just not the move I would do.
I mean, I could honestly see – I see your point with them drafting a quarterback. I could see them drafting a quarterback still, but I also still see them signing him and committing to him. I don't think it's going to be for 4 or 5 years. I think it's more of like a 2 or 3 year type range. I don't think it's going to be that long, but I think I think next year he'll still have some fantasy relevance. I think he'll probably reach the top 10. But I mean, there's a lot of better names out there. He could fall like right at the 10 position for me. Like that's kind of where I have him really. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where my head is at right now, with Geno Smith going forward. So,
I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate that spot at 10.
You hate it. Just tell me you hate it. I know you do.
No, I truly don't. Like, it seems fair. For what he produced this last year, 10 seems fair. I wouldn't pay it, but I do think he could probably go around in that range.
He's a good backup.
I think that's probably a good spot for him.
He's a good backup for fantasy.
He's not bad.
Yeah, for fantasy, he's a good backup. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, man. All right. Well, those were our top 5 quarterbacks with what we picked and what was actually picked this year. I think that's going to do it for us, right, Colton? I don't think we have anything else planned for this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. So, on that note, thank you guys so much for listening to us today. We are looking to bring Luis back after the Super Bowl. We're going to start doing podcasts on Sundays pretty soon. So, yeah, after the Super Bowl, we're looking to start doing our podcasts on Sundays, which should be pretty fun. So, Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this episode of the Halftime Adjustments podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at halftime_ADJ. And you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you guys next week. Later.